plants start to flower, and so we back them just to control the pollination. And here they started to set seeds and produce seeds. So what are going to do is to select some lines that could bolt and flower at shorter day lengths, so we don't need to extend the day lengths with artificial illumination, and could also bolt and flower under shorter fertilization periods, so it doesn't need to fertilize for 12 weeks. They can only fertilize at 4 weeks or even at higher temperature. So we don't need to go to 4 degrees. So we need to select lines that can can be fertilized and produce seeds at 12 or even more degrees. So the economical advantage of producing sugar beet seeds in Egypt, we have many advantages for producing sugar beet seeds in Egypt. First, we'll produce varieties which are more adapted and more acclimated to the Egyptian environmental conditions, and they will perform better under Egyptian conditions in terms of beet yield and sugar yield. And hence we can enhance or improve the productivity of sugar beet in Egypt. And of course, it's like a national security issue. So we can keep or try to improve and keep and save the sugar industry in Egypt, which is now, about 65 or 60% is dependent on sugar beet, and 30 to 35% dependent on sugar cane. And finally, we can hold and save foreign currency, which is required for imported sugar beet seeds. Finally, I want to thank first Beet Sugar Development Foundation for funding this work, Dr. Imad Ujil for nice and excellent collaboration, and USDA ARS, and I want to thank Asut University, which is my university, Faculty of Sugar Technology and Integrated Industries, and Faculty of Agriculture, Asut University. And thank you for attention.
Thank you. So before we proceed, I would like to say a few words. Thank you very much, Dr. Salah, for the presentation. And we have time so that we can have few questions before we go to the second presentation. Is there any questions on sugar beet production in Egypt? So as Salah mentioned, it's a 40 years experience on cultivation itself. But there is only from 2002 until today, that is about 18 years, trying for seed production. So if there is any question, we are welcoming 1 or 2 questions before we start the next presentation. All right, thank you very much, Dr. Salah. Please give him a hand. Thank you.
The next lecture presentation will be delivered by our chairman of the session, Dr. Imad Ujil. Dr. Imad Ujil has completed his PhD in genetics, agriculture, and forestry. His area of specialization is in molecular biology and molecular genetics. His experience of 22 years in research and in genetics, the diversity of the crops, their progenitors and intergenera computational genetics. He released 7 sugar beet genetic stocks and parental lines, published several papers on sugar beet gene and disease resistance. I will request Dr. Imad Ujil to deliver his lecture on applied research strategies for sugar beet drought, heat tolerance, and seed production.
missing here. Good afternoon again, and I would like first to thank the VSI managers for inviting me for this important conference. Also, I have an old relationship with the Director General when we met a few years ago and we talked about sugar beet potential in India. Myself, as a geneticist, I would like as well to talk about what is the mission of the USDA national program. We have a vision for increasing the genetic and genomic information and bioinformatics tools all around the world, as well as it's a very important part on the mission of the United States Department of Agriculture is that we help other nations. This is why I highlighted that part. This is why when we say that we are giving germplasm or we are helping, it's part of our job. So we do it as part of our job. And I want to just give a few points about the sugar beet industry in the United States. It contributed about 55%. So what we grow in sugarcane, it's about 500,000 hectares and 500,000 hectares or more of sugar beet. In Idaho, where I work, and we have a small program compared to other states, especially in the Red River Valley area, that is Minnesota, North Dakota, and Michigan, that area, they grow larger areas of sugar beet. The tonnage, we can get 85 tons and more actually per hectare, as well as we have consistently reached 18.5% of sugar content on fresh weight. So you easily to get 280 kilograms per ton, and that is 13.5 tons per hectare. The USA sugar beet industry, as old as the sugar industry actually in Europe, we learned a lot from Europeans when they brought the sugar beet to the United States a long time ago in the 18th century. But the development actually of the new genetics has been achieved in the United States, specifically the monogerms, and the hybrids has been taken over by the private companies. All the sugar beet in the United States is genetically modified. So specifically for herbicide resistance. So you know glyphosate is produced by Monsanto and now it's bought by Bayer. So it becomes a big company that is working on sugar beet genetic modification. There is more new technologies going on, specifically in Europe, with regard to herbicide resistant, in a different way, not directly like the genetic modification using the genetic engineering methods. Sugar beet in the United States can be grown rain-fed 100%, like the Red River Valley area, that is North Dakota, Minnesota, and that part of the world as well as Michigan. But there is a large areas which is at least 300,000 hectares are irrigated, and mainly the irrigation is a sprinkler, and there is little irrigation using flood irrigation, furrow irrigation. In California, actually, where sugar beet really started was big, now is going to almost only 40,000 acres, very small areas, and there is one factory there. In Idaho, where we have about 75,000 hectares, we have 3 factories. The biggest area, which is called the Red River Valley, they have 7, and Michigan have 5. And the western, when we say western United States, that is Wyoming, Montana, and Colorado. I want on this part onward to talk about an applied research strategies for sugar beet. Specifically when we are here in India, we talk about drought, and as well as if we want to go into a tropics, we have to talk about heat tolerance. And when we want to talk introducing a new crop to a new country, they want independence, so that they want their own seed produced in their own land. So we have few plans and strategies to help with that. Sugar beet itself is a very plastic genetically. When we say there is a genetic plasticity, it is either the crop will go into a perfect change genetically, or adaptive, or non-adaptive. Luckily, sugar beet is within the group of adaptive genetic plasticity, so that you can adapt it to different environments. And that is what happened with sugar beet historically. Sugar beet is a man-made crop, so it is not found in the wild like you can find wheat in the wild, or find sorghum or cotton or so on. Sugar beet has been developed by human beings during the Napoleon Bonaparte era, when they had a problem with sugar from the Caribbean islands. So the breeders in Germany and France, they work hard to produce a sugar a crop that can be grown in Europe. They did not want to depend on bringing sugar from overseas. So that is actually a very good indicator that sugar beet has high plasticity. We call it adaptive plasticity. We take advantage of that. So you can work on an environmental conditions, and you can have an irreversible fitness. So when we talk about genetic fitness, for those of you who are familiar with that, they know that that is a major the major effort the breeder has to do. As well as heritability is pretty high when we talk about genomic response. You can select for a lot of biotypes, and you can select from a small population of 2,000 plants to all the extremes of sugar content, sugar canopy, and the size root, as well as a root shape, for example. So it's very plastic when we talk about genetics. But still there is genetic limitations for the breeders like myself. When we want to work, it's not like wheat, which way you can get in 3 months you get seed. Sugar beet is a biennial. It means that it go vegetatively for 1 year, and then next year go reproductive, where it produce the seed. So that you need about 6 to 7 years to produce a good inbred line, but you can force that using artificial conditions. Still, we can produce seed in a very small scale from when we grow seedlings that are 10 weeks old. Then we vernalize them for 90 days, and then within another 90 days you can harvest mature seed. There is a bottleneck in the genetics of sugar beet, and that can be helped by mutation, breeding, and other new tools. Again, with the plasticity issue, it is very interesting part, specifically when you are talking new crop, new area. So you can really work on the environmental conditions. You can reduce the water crop requirement by 30%. You can grow it in the rain-fed, like only 300 millimeter in certain zones if the temperature is low. You can increase the sugar content up to 20%. Easily we can get 21, 22% actually in experimental. We did not manage to get it into the field yet. You can get very smooth root. That is very important in sugar beet, to have a smooth root, because dirt, when it comes with the roots to the factory, they have to be washed by water. And again, when we talk about new crop in areas like this, you need to think about heat tolerance, as well as we work hard on frost tolerance and non-bolting varieties to be suitable for planting early or planting in the fall. Also, it can be used as a very good feedstock for bioethanol production, and everything from beet can be used for animal feed as well. And we have what we call it a dream, that to have a physiological programming of leaf senescence. In Idaho, our program is focused on producing parental lines. So this is why recently or throughout the last 13, 14 years, we released 7 genetic stocks on parental lines. We look to identify novel genes that they control the physiological pathways, and to introduce these traits and lines that carry the genes into a new germplasm and deploy it, give it to everyone in the world. We deploy genomic selection and DNA marker-assisted selection. The target traits in Idaho specifically, we have a real problem with a disease called curly top. So we work to produce disease-resistant material for curly top and rhizomania and cercospora leaf spot, as well as rhizoctonia. This is a root rot, and fusariums in sugar beet. So also increasing sugar content in varieties or genetic stocks that they are high in sucrose. That is what we call it genetic drag, or when there is a real problem in one genes, it actually drag to other traits, like sucrose content goes really lower when you have a disease like curly top. Very important when we talk again about new countries, new areas, water deficit, heat stress, and frost tolerance. We work on that, and we share our data and our germplasm with other countries. Of course, in advanced laboratories, we do this application of genomics and sequencing tools to expedite our research and breeding programs. This is a nursery, we call it. It's for rhizomania. It's very uniform nursery where we can select for rhizomania resistance. It is a disease in the field. It is very devastating, and you can lose your whole crop by this disease. This is another disease, which I mentioned, that this is really in the dry areas. It is beet curly top, and we start to inoculate in early May, June. Then by July, the crop will be really devastated. Like if you see just here in 1 month, the field is totally wiped out. Drought and heat stress. This is very important, new part actually. We're just working on this for the last 6, 7 years. And we want to have a good and reliable screening protocol. Dealing with water and in soil and in different environment is very critical and not an easy type of research. So we wanted to develop a very good protocol for screening for drought and heat stress. And we use gene expression profiling. That is the molecular part, which we use very advanced tools when we have near-isogenic lines. We sequence both, and then we work on the selection for the trait of interest. And here we are selecting for drought tolerance. When we identify this drought-tolerant germplasm, we go into what we call it the drought hub, where the areas that there's drought and water problems, we approach actually scientists. We approached as well Dr. Salah in Egypt, because there is a heat area as well as there is a scarcity of water expected, and we can screen in Egypt, we can screen in India, we can screen in areas where there is high temperature as well as high demand for water. In this experiment, we had 7 genotypes, 6 breeding lines and 1 commercial line, and we had 6 irrigation regimes. We used the evapotranspiration as our control, so that if you have 100% crop water requirement, it means that you are satisfying the crop with all the evapotranspiration throughout the season. So, but we went into a higher level, which is 125%, because in Idaho specifically, actually, the farmers, they over-irrigate. And the water is available and they use it. And we left the 6 treatment as rain-fed. We have very little rain, which is about 200 to 250 millimeter during summer in Idaho, so the crop can grow on it. So this is a setup of the experiment. These are only 2 reps. We did 4 reps and split plot design and all the technical parts. I don't want to go through it. But in the middle, this black line is a sprinkler line. And the water will go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These are the 6 levels. 6 is the drought stress, which is only on rainfall. So that is pretty minimum for the crop to grow. So as you see here on the far left-hand side, this is a rain-fed plot. So the crop is really suffering, and you can see there is a real decline in the production as well as its wilting, very clear. This is different from another crop, another variety, which is on the far end or far back of the picture. This is here a relationship just between the ERS, the recoverable sugars yields, and the water which has been applied through the treatments. And we can see clearly that there is a good correlation between these treatments, as well as we can see there is certain genotypes that perform far better at a lower water content when we are about 20, 22 of the inches. All the varieties are almost the same. So we use gated pipe irrigation to help in Egypt, and I think in India here we can use drip irrigation, and it's very well controlled to work on the drought stress experiments and evaluate the material for drought and heat stress. These are the components, and this is what Salah showed you before. We have done it there. The other environmental extreme is frost tolerance, and that is not really for here, but for the United States, the farmers, they start to grow sugar beet pretty early, sometimes in April, and then still the frost is expected until 15th of May. So the plant will be in a very small stage, and then it becomes, exposed to frost. And we work on this. Simply, we really do a full experiment and wait for the frost time and go through the winter. So we wanted to develop a winter beet, and that will be very interesting as well for other people in Europe specifically. We were able to actually go through the non-bolting sugar beet, and we produced lines that are mutants, and we can share that with other people. Sugar beet, after it gets harvested, it has real problems. As you see here, this field, for example, all the roots are becoming exposed. And if that happened in India or in Egypt this way, you are losing at least 10 to 15%. And when you take them to the piles, this is how we do it in the United States. Huge piles. Each pile is like 3, 4 stories high. And but the weather is fine, because when they harvest by end of September, it becomes very cold, and then it freezes in certain areas. And there is ventilation system that they put in the files. But also sometimes they store it inside, and the situation becomes difficult with regard to the fungi and problems. So if we want to establish an experimental seed production, there are certain challenges. That is, how do you vernalize your varieties, as well as then you can solve it. You know, you can go with a very simple system. This is in Egypt, and you have seen this picture. This is a simple seed production for a breeding program in Idaho. And this, I just put this is just to show that there is a chance that you can use this information for seed production in Pune, which is, far north than
I mean, far south than Oregon, where we produce seed, but still, when you are on the east side, you have another advantage. There is a potential that we work with VSI on breeding transfer agreement so that we can provide some germplasm, and that germplasm can be used. Thank you very much. And I'm available for questions if you have any questions. Any questions? Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Imad, for your nice presentation. Now, third presentation will be delivered by Dr. Timothy Mason. He is Executive Secretary of WABCG, situated in France. He's completed master's degree in plant breeding. He is an agronomist. As an agronomist for Caritas Internationalis in Cambodia. He is an economist in French Meat Industry Sector Union and Secretary of French Egg and Meat Products Union France. Worked as economist in French Beet Growers Confederation. Nowadays, he is Secretary of World Association of Beet and Cane Growers in France. His theme of presentation is the activities of WABCG in increasing the sugarcane and beet productivity. I will request Dr. Timothy Mason.
So good afternoon, everyone. So I'm not a researcher. In fact, I am an agronomist and an economist. And I work for the WABCG. I will present the WABCG. And I've been asked to present what we do to increase sugarcane and sugar beet productivity around the world. So thank you very much for letting me speak. First, I want to explain a little bit what we are. In many countries, all the green point here, growers are federated into associations. It's association where they can bring together knowledge. They can try to make some lobby in front of their government, but also in front of the miller, for instance. And they decided to join together, all together, inside this World Association of Beet and Cane Growers. It's only ruled by growers. We have 35 member associations from Europe and USA, for instance, for sugar beet, but also for sugarcane in Central America, South America, Australia, Africa. In India, we have not the member is not an association, it is the institute, and that's why I'm here. And in total, we represent almost 60% of the sugar production made by independent growers, by family holdings. And once again, we are only ruled by grower. My president is a grower from Brazil, and the vice presidents are growers from Australia, USA, and France. How do we help growers linking together? First, we propose some meetings. So twice a year, we make all the growers meet together early November in London to share experience. And very often we can consider that they have the same problems, in fact, and so that they can share the solutions together. And every spring and summer, we meet all together in a host country for a 2-day conference and field visits. Last one was in Ribeirão Preto in Brazil. Our next one will be in Munich in Germany. Once it's in a sugar beet country, and the year after it's a sugarcane country. And we also make publication. We have 3 kinds of publication for our members. First, I publish every month a market news. This is a document, a 9-page document, where we try to explain to the growers what is the situation of world sugar market, but also about ethanol market. And the goal of this publication is to help growers to work with their miller to have a better price for their sugar beet or their sugarcane. But it's also to help the growers to adapt the acreage of their production in function of the market. For instance, nowadays the market is quite low, and we try to give tools to growers to understand if the market can increase, and if they should increase their acreage, or on the opposite, if they should decrease their acreage. Every month we also publish a document called News of WBCG, who give news from different countries. And every year we publish a study to help the Growers Association. For instance, we made one study to explain how we can share the value of sugar within the industry between millers and growers. We made also a study to help growers to see how they can control the reception of their sugarcane or their sugar beet, because when a grower delivers a sugarcane, very often he does not know how much sugarcane he delivers, so he needs to be very confident with the miller to know the amount of sugarcane delivered, and we give tools to help in this. And the next study will be how to strengthen the Growers Association, how they can be financed, and how they can work in a better way. So let's go to how did we do in WBCG to increase sugarcane and sugar beet productivity. First of all, I want to begin by repeating again that we can see around the world that the public budget spent on agriculture is decreasing. More and more, the research made on agriculture is made by private company. And here is a graph. On the left side, you have the high-income country. On the right side, you have the middle-income country. And it represents the share of the budget spent on agriculture research conducted only by public sectors. And you can see that within 30 years, the drop is by 10 points in high-income countries and 20 points in middle-income countries. It means that more and more, the research in agriculture is made by private company and less by public sector. Why is it important? According to us, it's very important because private sector, of course, they need returns on investment. And thus, more and more, research focus on improved seed, on fertilizers, herbicides, and machinery. But less and less about agronomy. And for a sugarcane grower or for a sugar beet grower, agronomy is essential, and we can consider that less and less we have available tools to help us in doing so. And maybe it's part of an explanation that explains that the potential yield in the field can be well below the average yield, and that in some countries we can consider that there is yields increasing in experimental conditions, but not often in the fields. Let's give some figures about that. Here I represent the average yield in the field in different European countries for sugar beet compared to the potential yields you can have in the trials in the technical centers, for instance. So for instance, the first line is in Italy. In Italy, on average, a grower can have 60% of what he could have made if he was brilliant in agronomy and so on. And sometimes it's not a problem of cost, because another study made by an university in the Netherlands showed that, for instance, in the Netherlands, nowadays they only reach 80% of what they could do. And in the Netherlands, it has been shown that the best producers, they can reach 100% without increasing their variable costs. So the real question for us is how to disseminate the good practices to increase the average yield, but without higher costs for the grower. Another example, it's in Brazil. In Brazil, an institute called CCT have estimated that more than a quarter of the increase in yield during the next decade will be made through agronomy. Here you have the sugar yield in Brazil. In blue, it is the actual average sugar content in the fields. It's 12 tons of sugar per hectare on average. And they estimate that within 2025 or within 2030, we will have 4 tons per hectare more thanks to genetics. But we can also have 1.5 tons per hectare more thanks to agronomy. And here, it's an increase by 12.5%. And this could be an easy increase. We don't need special techniques for that. We just need to disseminate the results conducted on agronomy on the fields. But once again, who will ensure the dissemination of results into the fields? And it's even more important that in the future, we will have more and more a need of agronomy. Future challenges will impact practices. And among them, we have seen this morning climate change. This morning, we have learned about water scarcity. We have learned also about soil salinity, and repeated drought makes the soil poorer. And we also face changes in pests. I'm sure that even here in India, you assist that pests are evolving with the climate change. More the population will increase. We will have to use less land and to produce more food. And then it's probably the case in India, it's especially the case in Europe or in US, we have higher civil society concerns. We will need to use less phytosanitary products, and we will have to reduce carbon emissions. I'm sure concerning cane burning here also in India, you have to face these concerns. And here again, the subject will also be in agronomy. So we need to have a strong agronomy studies and dissemination within the fields. And this is why we made a study in WABCG. We made a study amongst our members. So we had 19 replies from all over the world. We had 8 beet growing countries: Austria, Denmark, France, Japan, Morocco, Romania, Turkey, and UK. And we had also 11 cane growing countries in Africa, Ivory Coast, but also South America: Colombia, Brazil, Malawi, Mauritius, Mexico, South Africa, Sudan, Tanzania, Thailand, and Uganda. And we tried to summarize how is the technical support organized. It can be made by NGOs, by millers, by growers, by technical centers, or by grower associations. In some countries, we can see that the work of dissemination is made by NGO. I will not describe everything. If you need the study, I will provide it. Contact me and I will give it to you. 2 examples, in Colombia or in Malawi. In Colombia, it's an NGO that provides incentive for the growers to try to increase their agronomical practices. They developed a tool to make an online, thanks to a telephone, you can have a self-evaluation of your practices, and it helps you to have better agronomical practices in order to reach better yield with a lower cost. In Malawi, it's also the case. NGOs have developed that, but very often it has been criticized like it's not enough technical agricultural skills, and sometimes projects are also made within a time frame, and support disappears, and then the support is finished. Millers can also give advice. In most of the countries, in fact, millers advise growers. It can be general advice, thanks to meetings, or personal advice. It can be associated also with the sale of equipment. You can buy fertilizer, phytosanitary products. It's especially the case when you have cooperative, like in Turkey or in Japan. It can also be contractual. It means that the miller have to give advice to the grower. It's the case in Morocco. And in the study, some growers said they were quite skeptical in this scheme. I just quote a grower saying that most of the support is done with an aim to aid the miller to recover loans given by farmers, rather than enabling the farmers to get profits. Another example is state representatives. You can have public authorities that help the growers. Examples have been given in Thailand or in Morocco. You can have also technical center. They can be specific to beet or cane, or they can be general. If they are general, for instance, in Romania, you have a technical center for potatoes working also on sugar beet, and then usually it's paid by the government. But if it's specific on one crop, and I think it is the case also here with VSI in India, but when I made this study, India was not yet member of the association. But usually it's under interprofessional management with representatives from Growers Association and representatives from Millers Association. And everyone pay a fee. For instance, in France, when we deliver sugar beet, we have to pay 7 cents of euro per ton of sugar beet to the technical center, and the miller gives the same amount of money, and so that it's financed by both entities, and both entities can choose the program. And in the study, it has been said that being financed by growers allows them to be part of the decision-making body. From technical centers to growers. In the study, it has been shown that technical centers are viewed by the growers more like an information provider than a real dissemination factor. And few countries really underline dissemination made by their technical centers. And it is underlined indeed that conducting studies and disseminating results requires very different skills. So in many countries, the dissemination is made by Growers Association. The association, the Grower Association, they can employ agronomists who give advice on farms. This is the example in Brazil. If you live in Brazil, in the region of Aoste Paulista, then each grower receives a visit, a technical visit from the association at least 5 to 6 times per year. It's also the case in France, where the Grower Association invites the technical center to give information on the fields. And a key step to make sure that R&D is based on growers' ability to implement results in fields is that the growers are members of these technical centers. What we can say also that we have realized that very few work is made on production costs. Very few countries, the technical centers are interested in production costs. It's very rarely treated. It can be done sometimes in Colombia. Brazil also developed that through the Growers Association. Also in France, the Grower Association make training for the farmers in order to help them to evaluate their cost production. And it can be done also in Germany. In Germany, you have a website where you enter all what you do in your farm, and at the end, it will calculate your cost of production, and it will help you to see if what you do is interesting in an economical point of view. So to conclude, what we have seen is that research and development is increasingly conducted by the private sector, and that the private sectors, of course, needs a return on investment. And thus, agronomy seems less treated than new varieties, input or machineries, whereas this field is one of the most challenging for yield improvement and also one of the most challenging to adapt to new challenges like climate change in the future. A very important part is that the economical part, production costs, seems very rarely taken into account, although it is a key point. You don't need to make a fantastic yield if it will cost you extremely expensive. It would be better to have a lower yield if at the end of the day you have a better revenue for the grower. But to know that, each grower should be aware of the costs in his farm, and Growers Association should help in doing so. So when they exist, technical centers can provide accurate data, but sometimes in some countries, it seems regretted that they are not always efficient in disseminating the results to the growers. And then, in this case, grower associations are trying to address this issue, but very often the lack of competence or money. So, main conclusion, and I finish with this slide, According to us, according to WBCG, according to the growers in my association, increasing productivity is not a priority by itself. The priority remains the growers' income. This is the only way to have a long-term relationship within the industry. This is why the participation of growers' association in the research and development process, to finance the research, but also to decide what research could be done, is essential. This is the only reason why we will have studies that don't give a return on investment to researchers, but to growers, sowing methods, technical itinerary, etc. This is also essential to disseminate the results in the fields, so that at the end of the day, the good results gained by the researcher would reach the grower, and then to make sure it is benefiting the entire farm economy. But for this, we need strong associations, strong growers association, organized growers association, and independent, and financially independent also. And with this, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Timothy. And if you have any questions for Dr. Timothy, you are welcome to ask these questions. So specifically, if there is anyone who interested, yeah, please go ahead. Microphone to sir here, please. Please. Microphone there for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I'm allowed to speak 1 or 2 minutes, I would be grateful. I have gone through the session, and my feeling is this. The climate change has been just passingly mentioned, and not even passingly, but just mentioned. No efforts have been made by anyone to study in details and its impact that is going to happen. Poor little girl, 16-year-old Greta Thunberg, has been repeatedly mentioning about this, but no attention has been paid by anyone, any nation or any polity. In India, sir, this past 1 year, our production has been reduced to by 54%, sugar production. Number one, more than 55% of the sugar mills stopped production in the Maharashtra and Karnataka region. Now, it is floods, sea rise because of the climate change. In entire coastal zone, we had serious problems. Floods, droughts, and to the extent people have suffered, nearly 75 lakh hectares have been destroyed, total crop. Everywhere there is a shouting for the farmers to be compensated. What I'm trying to say is this: somebody should take immediate steps to study what can be done to prevent this happening. In case of sugarcane, nobody has developed any, unless I don't know. Short duration varieties have never been developed at all. You see, even whether it is sugar beet or sugarcane, we need to develop short duration varieties, keeping in mind the climate change. When and how will we learn? You see, I'm referring to a World Bank report on this. Asia's hotspots. It is published publication, available on the website, but it's a price publication. One should study the reality of those things and come out with future, because we are not staying in the past. Yesterday has gone, today is going tomorrow is coming. What are we going to do about it tomorrow? That is what my sincere question.
All right, thank you very much. So Timothy, I will just reiterate the question, and it's mainly about climate change and what are the scientists did for mitigating the problem. And he mentioned these reductions in areas and reductions in use of certain crops. And what are the scientists did really for short season crops? For example, did we have varieties that they are really, they use little water or so? Go ahead.
So I don't know if I will reply to the question. I'm not sure to have understood, but concerning the climate change, what I am sure is that agriculture is a way to mitigate climate change and also to adapt climate change. And to adapt to climate change, we will need, of course, genetics. But to mitigate climate change, we will need much more agronomy. And it has been shown this morning also with soil carbon sequestration that by changing a little bit our practices in, for instance, in fixing carbon in the soil, we can mitigate quite a lot climate change. But for that, we will need to increase agronomical practices and we need to increase research and development on agronomy. And we have but to note that for the moment, most of the research are made on different topics, like only genetics and chemicals, and we should focus much more on agronomy, which will not give a return on investment. And for that, if we do not invest in this research, it will be very, very strong, very painful. And I agree with you that it's quite urgent.
All right, thank you. If there's any more questions for Timothy. Okay, thank you, Dr. Timothy. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Timothy Mason, for your valuable information on activities of WABCG. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Jean-Noel Everard. He is Head Marketing Communication in S.S.Magar Sugar-Beet Production Company. Mr. Jean-Noel Everard is an engineer in agriculture in ISA in Little France. His area of specialization is to development of sugar beet under subtropical conditions. His experience is Head of Marketing and Communication of S.S.Magar Sugar Beet Production Company. He is Head of Global Crop Development and in charge of the development of sugar beet under subtropical conditions, especially for the India. The theme of his presentation will be sugar beet seed production for tropical conditions. I request Dr. Jean-Noel Everard to give the presentation to the gathering.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Goke. I have to say special thank you for VSI to invite us here. Mr. Deshmukh, thank you very much for this invitation to make a presentation about the sugar beet production here in India. I have to say my presentation, I will first with a short introduction. We just spoke about the lack of water and the climate change. So my first slide will be about climate change. The climate change drives challenge for global economy, but not only for global economy. Should be also challenge for politics to take the right decision. And then challenge for industry, particularly in farming, but also challenge for farming itself. We need to adapt a little bit. And in farming, our business as a seed company need to be adapted, need to anticipate what could be the consequence of such change in the climate. So we need to do more with less, and the first one will be less water, but we need more yield. We spoke this morning about the increasing the population. In 2050, the population could be such important that we need to feed everyone. So we need to be creative. And to be creative, why not to speak about sugar beet, which is the theme of this afternoon. So just to tell you, sugar beet is also already an important crop in the world. It's more or less 25% of total sugar production in the world. If we split that production by big area, let's to show you, in East Europe, which is mainly Russia and Ukraine, we are speaking about 1.7 million hectares of sugar beet. In EU, 25, 27 countries, is 1.7 million hectares of sugar beet. But let's move to Asia. It's 300,000 hectares. We spoke just before about America, 500 million hectares of sugar beet. That means in total, at the world level, we are speaking, I would say, only about 4.5 million hectares of sugar beet in the world, which is quite very important for us, for a company like me, like S.S.Magar, because the particularity of the sugar beet seed company as S.S.Magar, we are only focusing on one crop, sugar beet seed. So sugar beet for us is a sustainable crop. So you can see here my presentation. So I will speak about the company. It's very important to understand what we are doing in our company before to move what we did and what we are doing today in India, and what will be the benefit of sugar beet for India. I will explain a little bit the production of sugar beet. We just speak about how to increase the agronomy. So we try to do that with our company. And more important also in the country like India is about ethanol production. So what we can do with sugar beet in ethanol. So I will make a short conclusion about that, my presentation. So as I said just before, S.S.Magar is only focusing on one crop, sugar beet seed. That's very important to know, to understand. That means all the people working in the company are focusing in one crop. And I have to say the sugar beet research is booming today. We invest a lot in new technology. We spoke about the genome, we spoke about big data, and new technique of breeding, new breeding technique. And of course, we put in place new phenotype tool. Better tool means knowledge lead to innovation. We need to innovate a lot in our country and in our beet. So what about the sugar beet in role in this? So due to that, my predecessor spoke about the increase we expect from the Sugar Institute, not at farmer level, but more or less 1 to 2% yield increase per year. The breeding is part of that, but also the technology or the technicity of the farmer. That we need the innovative tool, and we expect to still have a huge potential for the future. So 100% of sugar beet, that means 600 people are working only on one crop. We are working in 25 countries. We are selling the seed in more than 50 countries, and we reinvest, which is very important, more than 18% on our turnover in R&D for one crop. Don't forget, still one crop. So for that, we invest a few years ago in the big center. We call it Innovation Center, S.S.Magar Innovation Center. So that been opening day, it was 4 years ago. It's only dedicated to 20,000 square meters in research and greenhouse, laboratory. And we invest 3 times the capacity of R&D. The total investment for this building was 20 million euros. For that, we need to also to have a new tool, marker in action. So the marker as the base of the selection, a keystone for all our breeding program. In 2017, we have more or less 1 million plants analyzed per year. That means already 20 million data points to analyze. The objective is to increase the number of plants to analyze. The objective is to increase by 2, by 3. We don't know yet, but we are putting a lot of pressure on R&D. The particularity of sugar beet, I will say, I'm not specialist, I'm not genomic people, but it's only 9 chromosomes. It's not so big, I mean, in terms of number of chromosomes. But we have already a lot of marker molecules in it. You can see these small, are just marker molecular. We identify it. That means we can know exactly what the trait is doing, what this part of the chromosome is regulated. Is it the sugar content? Is it the sugar yield? Is it the disease resistant, drought resistant? This is this kind of tool we use to say, okay, this line, this sugar beet is good for that or is good for that. So biostress management is very important for you, for us, to try to imagine. We are not going everywhere. We are adjusting our bioassay every day, every year, to try to, how can I say that, to first to increase the number of stress resistance for us, but to make the nature in the greenhouse. For the new equipment we are using, we have the possibility to adapt the soil, to adapt the stress, the temperature, the humidity, to give the chance to the beet to be resistant for many, many diseases. Also, we have a biotechnic trait development, so abiotic stress, abiotic assay, the drought is very important also for us. We spoke about before for US, but we also do that, not in the field, in the greenhouse. That was for few words about S.S.Magar. I just want to come back on India. What we did already for many years, with the help of Mohan Bajikar here in the room, we invest already time and money in the first trial in 2005. The first trial have been done not here, but close to it. It was in Karnataka, in Belgaum. And then we start the process to register the variety with some help, VSI, PCI, because we know some pests are particular for tropical conditions. We do some extensive trial with VSI, thank you to VSI again. And we make some trial with industry. We also go to train the farmer. We spoke about how to manage the farmer because it's a new crop, so the farmer needs to know how to manage his crop. And we extend that in Punjab as well, and I will come back on that later on. So just to make a quick map of where we have already tested the sugar beet variety for S.S.Magar, so from 1 to 8, so from the south to the north, from Karnataka to Andhra Pradesh, we test our variety everywhere, I would say more or less everywhere in India. We also have quite close contact with some institutes, official one, I.A.R.I in Lucknow, VSI in Pune, Baramati, close to here, University of Dharwad was one of the first one, University of PDKV was also one of them, and then we test it in Punjab, and we do also a lot of trial with sugar industry and at the farmer level as well. So I can say today we have quite a good feeling about the production of the beet in India for the farmer and the industry. That picture has been taken in Punjab. You can see it's not anymore a dream. Sugar bean can grow in India. I would say it's not anymore a question, but it's not so easy. That was one of the first pictures we took when we started this experimentation. It was in Karnataka a few years ago. I have to say the farmer was very happy with this beet. It's not easy to grow, but he was quite happy. That was a recent picture. It was 2 years ago now. It was in Karnataka, and these people, this field was quite good at the beginning, and I don't have the yield yet, but I will show you in a few minutes about the yield, potential yield for sugar beet in India. That's the result. We did that with VSI in 2017, 2018. So you can see here the yield of the sugar beet. We are speaking about per hectare after 120 days after sowing. Can you imagine? 4 months after the sowing, we reach already more than 70 tons per hectare, not per acre, but per hectare. After 150 days, we are close to 80, 70 to 80. And then 80 days, you have already 70 tons. So you see, depending on the sowing time, depending on the year, we can have already a good yield. Concerning the bricks is more or less between, after 120 days, 150 days, 180 days, between 14 You can have 14 here, also 17, even 18% of bricks for the sugar beet. I have to say that was a good performance for the VSI and for the variety. That was the variety name, variety number we tested. But again, every year we test a new genetic. This year, here in this campus, we test a new genetic again for disease resistances. So that was quickly about S.S.Magar in India. What are the benefits of the sugar beet for farmers in India, but also for the industry? First, if you are going from October to next October, the best period for sowing the beet in India is October. October to November is one of the best periods for sowing the beet here in India. Because then you can start to harvest in April. March, April is possible. And then, when the factory is finishing the campaign with sugarcane, they can start to process the sugar beet. So the idea is not to replace the sugarcane in the ground, is to have a complementary crop after the sugarcane. That will be helpful for the farmer, but also for the industry. To extend the sugarcane campaign for the industry, and then also to have a rotation, a crop rotation at the farmer level. As that is only 6 months, that means you need less water to irrigate. And then for the last month of the year, you can imagine to have other crop, could be sorghum, but just also because this morning we spoke about the organic carbon, a difficulty to maintain the organic carbon in the soil. Why not to imagine to grow at that time a green manure to maintain the fertility of the soil? The leaf could be one of them, but the green manure could be too helpful for maintaining the fertility of the soil. And then the year after you continue with sugar beet, but also could be a potatoes or other crop. So come back on the benefit for the factory, just to come back here. You see that is the campaign for the harvesting and processing the sugar cane from October till February, March, depending on the year. The sugar beet growing is starting from October to February. And then from that period, the factory can start to process the sugar beet in parallel. So that is very, very important to know. On top of that, the sugar beet also can bring some new product, a co-product we call it also, the pulp. When you extract the sugar out of the beet, after washing the beet, slicing the beet, and using a diffuser, you can have the remaining part, we call it the pulp. The pulp is very good cattle feed for cow. I know that some tests have been done to measure the increasing of the milking production. And the leaves are very good fertilizer, but also if you produce from the beet, the alcohol, ethanol, you have the remaining part is the vinasse. It's very good fertilizer of potassium. Additional point for beet is the salinity tolerance. This morning again I've been mentioned that the salinity tolerance is quite good for sugar beet. We tested already a few years ago in south of Maharashtra with saline soil 4.3 electric conductivity, which is quite, I would say, a good, a strong figure. The yield is not top one, but you can grow something. I will show you from US, from Florida. I mean, the effect of the saline soil between 4 to 8, the yield of the many crop are restricted. We just before see that the sugar beet, and you can show here, that is the curve of the sugar beet. So if you have a salinity, a conductivity of between 5 to 10, let's say 8, the sugar yield is still at 100%. It starts to decrease after the EC, the electricity conductivity, up to 8%, 8 points, I would say. That's very important to know. For some countries, some place, some state here, and some farm, could be one interesting crop. So what we can do with sugar beet? How to grow sugar beet? We did some tests, we did some trained farmers, we trained some farmers, sorry. Sugar beet can be grown in many soil types. That's the reality as well. The pH between 6 to 8 is possible, but what is very important for sugar beet growing is the seedbed preparation. If you miss that first step, you could have some difficulty to reach a good yield. So the multi-tillage operation is the same as for other crops, but seedbed should not be too deep. Need to manage the cloud, not too big, not too small. and we adjust, we say to the farmer, between 42,000 plants per acre to 50,000 plants per acre. That is a good plan. I took that picture from a book from US. So the seed should not be at the top. We say between 2 centimeters to 3 centimeters deep, not too more, to have a good space between two seeds, between 15 centimeters to 20 centimeters, and between 2 rows, depending on your crop, depending on your field. If you are using a few rows, between 65 centimeters, but you will see in a few minutes. So to help the farmer to grow sugar beet, we edit a manual, a technical information about how to grow sugar beet in tropical conditions. That is also available on the website of SES-Van SES-Van From the beet, we can do, I said that before, also ethanol production. So the first objective for in factory in Europe is to produce sugar. So first step, when you harvest the beet, you need to wash it, to slice the beet, and then you go to the diffuser here. But when you have the diffuser, for ethanol production, you just go to the fermentation, to make ethanol out of the sugar beet. But if you have the equipment, you can continue to produce sugar from sugar beet. But I think for India, one of the focus, the first step should be to make ethanol out of the sugar beet. In this case, the production of the sugar beet is that one. 1 acre can produce more or less between 20 to 25 tons of beet. Some, we have seen in the trial, we could reach more than 40 tons. But let's keep 25 tons of beet. 1 ton of beet can produce 150 kilograms of sugar. And 1 ton of sugar beet can produce 95 liters of ethanol. If I'm not mistaken, I think 1 ton of sugarcane can produce 70 liters of ethanol. So that means for 1 acre of sugar beet in India, we can expect to have between let's say 2,000, 2,500 liters of ethanol if the yield is, I would say, only 20 to 25 tons of beet per acre. So to make a conclusion about my presentation, I have to say that SES-Van is already in India for many years. We started in 2005. I think SES-Van, as you have seen, believe in sugar beet, but believe also in sugar beet in India. We have plenty of advantage for the sugar beet. The first ones could have a good yield after 5 months. We need less water, that's been said before, but that is a reality also for India. We could imagine to have 2 crops, not necessarily for 2 crops of sugar beet, but 2 crops. It's good also for the revenue of the farmer. Crop rotation to increase the land or the productivity of the land. And we have multi-crop co-product. And a good aspect also is productivity in saline so on ethanol production. Of course, it's not white. You could have, it's also for the farmer a new crop to manage. It's not easy every day. You have a special local pest and disease. We are working on that for the breeding aspect, but we cannot find everything in 1 day. And of course, the last one is a need industry investment to process the beet. We cannot put the beet like that in the miller. I would say this challenge is up to you to decide to go or not to go, but I'm fully convinced that it's possible in India. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jain. And if there is any questions, please go ahead and ask a question, please. Yeah. The question here? So it seems like there's no question, and thank you very much. Please give him a hand. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jean Noel, for your presentation and information on sugar beet production in Europe and seed production activities. Ladies and gentlemen, up till now, we have already given 4 presentations, and the sugar beet production strategies in USA, Egypt, Belgium, and France. In India, what is the necessity of sugar beet for Indian conditions? Why we are looking for the sugar beet to introduce in our sugarcane belt? The main reasons is that due to cyclic nature of our sugar industry, due to less rainfall or drought conditions after every 3 to 4 years, we are not getting sufficient sugarcane to fulfill the crushing season of the sugar mill, due to which the crushing season of the sugar mill cannot be run to the profitable level. Considering these difficulties, what we are thinking, we want to introduce this sugar beet crop as a supplementary to the sugarcane, not an alternative crop. We are not stopping cultivation of sugarcane. We need a supplement to sugarcane crop. With this, we are trying to introduce the sugar beet crop since last 15 years. In India, growing of sugar beet started in 1960s in Sri Ganganagar, but due to some difficulties, it has been stopped. VSI, Vasantdada Sugar Institute, Mahatma Phule Krishi Vidyapeeth, Rahuri, and there are some research stations. We are trying to have suitable agronomic practices and suitable varieties to be cultivated in tropical conditions. A research project on sugar beet confined by All India Coordinated Research Program and ICR. The results from outcomes from these projects has been emerged, and from these outcomes, we are confident to grow the sugar beet in Indian conditions. There are various advantages of sugar beet. It can grow in saline and alkali soils with a moderately salinity. It can produce 65 to 75 tons of sugar beet per hectare with a sucrose percentage of 18 to 19%. Sugar beet, 1 ton of sugar beet can produce 120 to 150 kg of sugar and 35 kg of molasses and 45 kg of dried pulp. More ethanol can be produced from sugar beet juice than that of the sugarcane. It can mature within 5 to 6 months. Water requirement of the sugar beet crop is much less than that of the sugarcane. It is 40 to 50% as compared to the seasonal sugarcane crop. The physical properties of the soil can be improved by cultivation of sugar beet and resulting the increase of the yield of the succeeding crops. Pulp received of the processing of the sugar beet can be used for the cattle feed, by which milk production can be increased. Since the sugar beet is a winter season crop, it can be grown in a pre-seasonal conditions. The proper sowing period we have advised during winter season, that is pre-seasonal sugarcane, pre-seasonal crop, right from September to December, we can sow the sugarcane crop, sugar beet crop, and we can harvest after 5 months. With the several experimentations, and we have a sugar beet processing plant. We run this sugar beet processing plant for 3 to 4 years at different locations. And the results and outcomes of the cultivation and processing of the sugar beet plant can show us the mixing of sugar beet juice with existing sugarcane juice can be possible with a ratio of 20 as to 80. Second option for sugar beet is separate processing plant for sugar beet, and it can run after finishing the sugarcane season. And third option to use the extracted sugar beet juice directly for the ethanol production. So, with this, we completed our 4 desired lectures from the distinguished speakers. Now, I request our chairman, Mr. Imad, Dr. Imad, to offer a memento of our love from VSI to our speakers. First of all, I request chairman to offer a memento to Dr. Jean Noel Everald. Thank you. I'll request chairman to offer a memento to Dr. Salah. Give him a big hand. Request chairman to give a memento to Dr. Timothy Mason. Now I will request our Director, Agriculture and Sciences and Technology, Mr. Vikas Deshmukh, to come on the dais and give memento to our chairman of the session, Dr. Imad. Thank you, sir. Now, I'll request Dr. Imad to have his concluding remarks about the presentations delivered during this session. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Gorky. First, again, I would like to reiterate that this is a good opportunity for us to talk about sugar beet production in general in the world and in India. We have 4 presentations, and the most interesting part that they are from 4 countries. So the one from Egypt is really representing something very similar to here as a new crop and how we can produce seed. The work which Dr. Timothy presented, actually, we need it exactly for the new farmers. So when you have a new crop, you need new information, you need the proper methods of dissemination. And as he reiterated earlier, he said that, you know, it's a matter of agricultural extension. It used to be provided by public sector, and now private sector need to do more and to do a more direct relationship with the growers. The part which is commercial part, always we need seed producers who that they will provide varieties that are suitable for a certain environment and also economically feasible for the growers. Again, I would like to mention that VSI actually taking good steps towards sugar beet that is addressing climate change, which has been one of the important questions. We in the United States, Department of Agriculture, we are committed to help worldwide anyone who want to introduce sugar beet in their cropping system or as a new crop totally. So I would like to thank the speakers, Mr. Timothy, Dr. Salah, Dr. Noel, and Mr. Gorky for their attendance as well as taking care of this session. Thank you for the attendance. Thank you for every one of you here. And this concludes our session today. Thank you.
Good afternoon all. Here is a small announcement. We have completed the section agriculture, fourth section about the sugar beet. And we take a break for 45 minutes for the tea. And at 5 o'clock onwards, all the poster presenters are requested to gather at the poster so that their evaluation of the posters will be taken place. And the announcement of the prizes will be tomorrow morning, and at the same time, the certificates also will be given to them. Thank you.